I'm Byers, Horticulture Field Specialist with the University of Missouri Extension, and I'm excited to be with you here today to talk about elderberry production. This video is intended to be a tool for people who are considering getting into elderberry production, but it also contains useful information for those who are already growing this exciting and profitable crop. We'll be talking about first some introductory material, then we'll talk about choosing a good site for elderberry production. We'll spend a bit of time talking about elderberry cultivars, then we'll talk about propagation and planting establishment and elderberry cultural practices, and then we'll finish with harvest and post-harvest handling. And sprinkled throughout this presentation will be a number of videos to help highlight points. I'm excited to be sharing with you today an interview with Sherry Hagenhoff of Sac River Valley Elderberry and Elderflower Farm, a very innovative elderberry farm in southwest Missouri. Let's take a look at and see what Sherry has to share with us. I'm Byers, Horticulture Field Specialist with University of Missouri Extension, and I'm so excited to be out here in an elderberry planting and to be interviewing one of the most innovative elderberry growers that I know, and that's Sherry Hagenhoff. Sherry, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us about the farm?
Okay, hi, I'm Sherry Hagenhoff, and this is Sac River Valley Elderberry and Elderflower Farm. And we are just nestled literally on the Little Sac River. We've been here since 2015 is when we started preparing and planting, and this is our third season for a good solid harvest. In the first season to have everything in production that
Excellent.
We're harvesting.
So how many plants do you have here?
We have roughly 2,800 plants.
Okay. Now, elderberry is a relatively new crop for southwest Missouri, and your farm is kind of leading the way as far as showing the potential for this crop here. But what first got you interested in elderberry?
Well, I actually had really significant improvements in my health by some of the things that I did in myself using other things besides elderberries, but I began to see the potential for eating right and doing the right things, and I started researching, and I saw the potential for elderberry as not only a way for us to make a little money on our couple acres that we have available, but also just to provide something very healthy for our community and different, and we like a challenge. My husband and I are hard workers, so.
Well, it certainly shows in what you've developed here in a relatively short period of time. So again, the farm's relatively young, but if you don't mind, kind of talk about the different cultivars you have here and how the planting is laid out.
Okay, well, the very first things that we planted to start with were Bob Gordon and ranch and a little bit of wildwood. We put out like 500 ranch plants to start, 350 Bob Gordon and 200 of wildwood. That was our first plantings. Then 18 months ago, we also added Adams to that, and we added Pocahontas, the newest and greatest.
The newest and greatest.
Yes, and so this is the second summer for the newest plants to be in production. So.
Very good. Well, it's a nice mix of different cultivars. It gives you more of a spread out season. Very good. So I'm curious, you've got the farm underway, you're harvesting elderberries, you're in business in essence. What would you see as some of the challenges to growing elderberries here in southwest Missouri?
I think in the very beginning, it was the agriculture industry that would support us, providing what we needed. We weren't sure all the things that we needed in the way of irrigation and prepping and just what materials we needed, so we really relied on NRCS, we really relied on the extension, we relied on businesses that we were dealing with to educate us and to help us understand what we needed and we had to learn how to describe what we needed. But so one was our agricultural suppliers, communicating with them and just getting everything out there. We could not just go up into Springfield, Missouri and get the products that we needed. We found out we had to literally go to certain places to get what we needed. Also, I think all along labor has always been an issue. To find qualified people, people with the energy and the stamina, it's intense. So finding people who could come and get get the job done and kind of make it a win-win situation where they were at least making some decent money, but also for us to be able to afford it. And in the beginning, we did a lot more of the work ourselves. The machinery, you know, finding the machinery that would cut time and help with production as well. We slowly built up. We didn't go into a lot of debt, so we had to build up what supplies we had to process everything. So I think that the labor, the machinery, and the ag industry supporting us, and I think those were really the bigger ones.
So tell me about how you market the crop.
Okay, I was very transparent and very real, and I call myself Sherry Plain and Small. From the very beginning, I just shared from my heart, this is our dream, and come along with us. And more and more people started following along and just kind of seeing from planting, or you know, putting out compost and tilling rows and putting in little sticks in the ground, and I've just really invited everybody to follow us, and as that grew, more and more people became aware of us. I literally have a Facebook page that I do that with, and I was still working at the time full-time, so I just quit that last October, so it's been a nice hefty balance to try to get everything done. But I post on Facebook when we have our berries available for sale. I post on Craigslist, and word of mouth has really grown for us. And we sell frozen, destemmed wash berries. I'm a DIY girl, and it appeals to me to try to provide. I thought if people are buying dried and imported berries, why wouldn't they want locally grown even more? And so for those DIY folks like myself, I've sold berries to them and shown them how to make. I've done classes, how do you make products with those berries, and just shown them all the possibilities. So,
oh, that's excellent. That's excellent. So you touched on a chord that I think is really important, and that's sort of developing community around a new crop like elderberry. And you know, through your Facebook presence, your social media presence, you've been a leader, quite frankly, in helping develop elderberries here in Southwest Missouri. Do you want to comment on that?
Well, I do network with area growers. My husband and I know how painful it was to get started and learn everything, and so as we would go to conferences at River Hills Harvest and work with you folks, we really reached out and hugged on to the folks that are nearby us so that we could provide them the support that we could. We also, we have workshops here for area farmers. We just try to get everybody together so everybody knows what is available, what they need to do. Many of them have come and done work days and worked here through the summer. We have had some out-of-state folks come and visit, but we're a nice tight-knit community here in Southwest Missouri. We have a Southwest Missouri pod. We have a Facebook group for that. We've just tried to share knowledge. Everybody has something to contribute, and that's the wonderful thing. Everybody has something they know more about, and so we give opportunities for people to speak up and share what they know, and we've shared from our mistakes to our failures to our successes, and so. Well,
that's huge, and I appreciate the role that you played in helping grow our industry here in Southwest Missouri. So what do you think the future looks like for Sauk River elderberries?
Well, I've got to keep employees. There's no way, like essentially we have 3 acres. There is no way we could do all the work, the harvesting, and right now we hire folks mainly to help with harvesting, and my husband and I do all the processing. I hope we will just continue to increase our volume of berries over time, but I also hope that we can continue also just to provide the frozen elderberries. We are starting to go into producing some added value market products, and so we'll get those out there and start pushing those out to the public. But I hope we're here. This is a retirement thing for my husband and I. Like I said, I quit working full-time in October. He's got a couple years and he'll be able to back off of work, and so hopefully it'll be an intense month of the year during harvest for us every year after this, but I do hope that we'll be around, and we can keep, it's cool when we can employ area youth and give them a job, and their parents are all thrilled and love it that this is the kind of work they can find to do. They're all learning, and I tell you, I can't say enough for just the community of people, from our customers to our elderberry grower friends, and around the world. I mean, we've had a visitor here from England. We've had visitors here from, like I said, all different states: Louisiana, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and we just hope that we can continue to share what we've learned, and we just hope to continue to support the industry.
Oh, that's fabulous. And people, of course, can follow your progress on your Facebook page.
Yes,
yes. What is the address of that?
It's Sauk River Valley Elderberry and Elderflower Farm.
Very good.
Yeah, they're on Facebook.
Well, thank you so much for joining me for the interview, Sherry. This has been fabulous. Thank you for sharing the story of Sauk River Elderberry and Elderflower Farm.
Well, we're happy to do it, always. Thank you.
There are 3 species of elderberry that are of interest from the standpoint of commercial production. In the United States, the American elderberry is the native elderberry of the eastern part of the country. Botanically, it's Sambucus nigra canadensis. The European or black elderberry is widespread in Europe and in Asia, Sambucus nigra. And the blue elderberry, found along the west coast of the United States, Sambucus nigra caerulea. The American elderberry is the elderberry of primary importance for the eastern U.S. This particular species of elderberry is found across much of eastern North America, from the Atlantic seaboard to the Rocky Mountains, and then from the Gulf Coast north into Canada. And in its native habitat, it forms a medium to large shrub to a small tree. It's prominent when it's flowering in June, and you can see in this slide the picture of the shrubs in blossom. They also produce clusters of dark purple-black fruit. The leaves are pinnately compound, and even during the dormant season, elderberry is easy to identify, as the woody parts of the plant have these raised bumps on the twigs and branches called lenticels. The elderberry is of growing commercial interest. Historically, elderberry was harvested primarily from wild plants and used to make jellies and jams. But in more recent years, we've seen not only a renewed interest in jellies and jams, but also interest in a variety of other products developed from both the flowers and the berries. These include, yes, jelly and jam, but also wine, beer, and spirits, health supplements, and food colorants. In thinking about a good site for elderberry production, first of all, of course, consider marketing. Elderberry is a processing berry, and the markets are somewhat limited for this particular berry. So it's very important to consider the potential marketing outlets for elderberry at the site. If the grower is interested in organic production, there may be some considerations that are unique to organic production. For example, neighboring land uses. Elderberry will need to be irrigated, so be sure that there is adequate irrigation of water, first of all of quantity, but also of the appropriate quality. Good elderberry sites are elevated relative to surrounding lands, and consider the previous uses of the site. It'll be obviously less expensive to prepare a site that is in row crops or pastures for elderberry compared to a site that is in timber. Let's turn our attention to elderberry cultivars. Historically, the improved elderberry development began with the work of William Adams in the 1920s in New York. And through his efforts, Adams 1 and Adams 2 were developed, and then later York, which was a cross of Adams 2 and another type of elderberry. Both of these types have been planted in Missouri. Both of these types have performed well. Another effort to develop improved elderberry cultivars took place in Kentville, Nova Scotia in the 50s and early 60s. And a number of cultivars were developed in that program, including Johns, Kent, Nova Scotia, and Victoria. Recently, the University of Missouri and Missouri State University Elderberry Development Program has released a series of elderberries that are adapted to Midwestern production. And these include Bob Gordon and Wildwood, and more recently Pocahontas. A cultivar called Ranch was also developed in this program. If growers are interested in European elderberry production, Hochburg is the leading cultivar worldwide, but an adapted cultivar coming from the Missouri Elderberry Development Program is Marge, released in 2013 and well suited for production in the Midwest. There are also a series of cultivars developed in Denmark that may have application in North America. Elderberries are commonly propagated from hardwood cuttings. These cuttings typically are 2 to 3 nodes in length. They're collected while the plants are dormant, generally in January or early February. And then the cuttings are stuck in early spring. They may be stuck into pots or they may be stuck directly into the soil. The next slide and video will illustrate the collection of dormant hardwood cuttings. Now let's turn our attention to elderberry establishment. And the first thing to consider is planting layout. An elderberry planting, of course, is a perennial planting. It's going to be here for a long time, and it's important to lay it out properly. Generally, the best elderberry sites are elevated sites above lower ground, so the cold air moves off of the elderberry planting into other areas. When planning the actual layout of the planting, keep in mind that if you have several rows of plants, they should follow the contour of the slope. That way you reduce any possibility of erosion soil loss by having the plants running along the contour of the slope. And then when you lay out the rows themselves, keep in mind that the rows should be 10 to 12 feet apart, as we see in this planting here, and that the plants within the row should be 2 to 4 feet apart. Elderberries may be established from either bare root or container-grown plants, as we see in this picture here. Elderberry plantings may also be developed by taking cuttings and directly sticking them into the soil, again as the center photo and lower photo illustrate. Now let's discuss elderberry pruning. Pruning elderberries is pretty straightforward. In Missouri, many farmers are managing elderberries by cutting the plants back to the ground during the dormant season, which would typically be in January or February. And the plants respond by sending up strong shoots from the base of the plant or even from the crown of the plant, and these typically are unbranched. They grow up, they're pretty much uniform in height, and each branch will be crowned with a cluster of flowers and eventually berries. The next topic to discuss is weed management in elderberry. Growers contemplating a new elderberry planting should be very conscious of weed management. The first step is to control problem weeds before you plant the elderberries, and particularly if you have weeds such as Bermuda grass, Johnson grass, poison ivy, wild blackberries, and other perennial troublesome weeds, eliminate those before you plant. Now with the planting in place, there's several things to consider. You typically have 3 zones of weed management to think about. The first is the area underneath the elderberry plants, the second is the area between the rows, and then the third is the interface between those 2 areas. So let's talk about the area between the rows first. Generally with elderberries, the area between the rows is maintained in some sort of permanent perennial crop. For example, a non-invasive grass could be used there, and then it's kept under control by mowing. The area under the plants, traditionally weeds were managed by using mulches, but increasingly growers are turning to the use of landscape fabric. This is a woven material that allows air and water to pass through it. It's durable enough that it will be in place generally for 8 to 10 years, and it does a fabulous job of weed control. Now with this landscape fabric, it's important to open up an area for the elderberry plants to grow. And this is frequently done by actually burning a hole in the fabric. And then it's also important to have some sort of irrigation system to provide water to this area. But the combination of the weed barrier fabric and the small hole around each plant helps control weeds under the plants. The third area is the interface between the row middles and the area under the plants. And this area can be managed by using a selective herbicide, or it can be managed by using some sort of way of mowing the weeds that grow up at this interface. Elderberries will need supplemental irrigation during dry periods, and drip or trickle irrigation systems work well. Typically, a system includes 18-millimeter tubes with emitters every 18 to 24 inches, and an elderberry plant needs about 1.5 inches to 2 inches of water per week. Elderberries are commonly irrigated with drip systems. This is a very efficient way to water a perennial plant like an elderberry. It puts the water exactly where the plant needs it, which is at the root system. It's also a more or less permanent installation. The type of tubing that's used for a perennial crop like elderberry is generally rated for 6 to 10 years of life. Now this particular type of drip irrigation has the emitters molded into the line. Here's an emitter right here, here's an emitter right here. And they are at intervals down the line. Typically with elderberry, the interval between emitters will be 18 to 24 inches. And it's important when these are laid down that the emitters be facing up. The irrigation line can be placed on top of the landscape fabric as we see here, or it can be placed underneath the fabric. If it's on top, of course, it's easy to see and maintain. If it's underneath the fabric, it's actually protected to some degree from damage. Elderberries are heavy feeders from the standpoint of nitrogen, particularly if the plant is cut back to the ground annually. Research and growers' experience suggests that 60 to 100 pounds of actual nitrogen per acre will be needed for plants on a 4x12 spacing. And this fertilizer is typically applied in the spring as growth begins. Other nutrients may also be required. Soil testing is recommended when establishing an elderberry planting to supplement nutrients if necessary, and at intervals during the life of the planting to monitor nutrient status. Foliar sampling is another way to monitor elderberry nutrition. Elderberries have several pests of consideration. First of all, aerified mite, as shown in the upper picture. This tiny mite can cause damage to the foliage and to the blossoms. The Japanese beetle, shown in the middle picture, feeds on the foliage and developing shoots of elderberry. And spotted-winged Drosophila is a problem in the berries as they begin to ripen. Information on managing these pests is available from the University of Missouri Center for Agroforestry and also in the publication Growing and Marketing Elderberries in Missouri. Several diseases of consequence are present in Missouri. Bacterial leaf spot can cause purpling of the foliage and loss of leaves. Phoma can cause shoot death and sometimes entire plant death. And elderberry rust can cause deformation of the fruit stems, the leaves, and the shoots of the elderberry. Again, management of these diseases, more information is found in the publication Growing and Marketing Elderberries in Missouri. Deer are certainly a consideration for management of elderberries, and a planting should be established with deer management practices in place. These can range from electrified 2-wire fences all the way to substantial fences that include woven wire, electrified strands, and a height of 6 to 8 feet. The elderberry blossom harvest takes place in June when the plants are in full flower. The blossoms are harvested when all the florets in the cluster are open. The florets may be removed by rubbing over a screen, or they can be snipped off from the clusters individually. The blossoms should be used immediately, or they can be frozen for later use, or what is most common is that they are dried for future use. Elderberry harvest takes place in July and August in Missouri. And the plants are harvested, the berries are harvested when all the berries within the cluster are fully colored. Generally, there's 2 to 3 pickings for plants that have been pruned back to the ground. As elderberries ripen, they progress from green berries, as we see here, to eventually a dark purple-black in color when the berries are ripe. Now, elderberries are commonly harvested using visual cues. In other words, all the berries within the umbel are fully colored. We can see in this umbel there's still a few green berries, and that's fine. This would still be at the point where it could be harvested. But increasingly, growers are using measurements of sugar content and acidity to help guide harvest decisions. At any rate, when the berries are ready to harvest, the entire cyme is cut and then it's taken back for processing, typically destemming, and then the berries are washed, sanitized, and then frozen. Elderberry yields build during the first 3 years of the plant's life. An expected yield in the year after planting is 1 pound of berries per plant. In the second year of production, 3 pounds of berries per plant, and the plants will be in mature yield by the 3rd to 4th year of production. This typically is 5 pounds of berries per plant. High yields in Missouri have been in the range of 10 pounds of berries per plant. Upon harvest, the fruit is destemmed. Here is the elderberry processing. So the harvested cymes are brought in. You can see them in the lug here. They're then destemmed. This is an example of a destemmer here.
top to vibrate, the berries and the cymes are moved around until all the berries have been sheared off by the movement of the screen. The berries then drop down in our pot below the destemmer. Stems are then removed. The stemmer does an excellent job of removing the berries.
Following destemming, the fruit is washed and sanitized. So now we're going to go through the process of sanitizing the berries, and we have a 3-bay sink set up. The first dip will be into a sanitizing solution. Sherry's tested the concentration of the solution, she knows what it is, and then after that the berries will move into 2 rinses, and then they'll be brought out for draining. So these are the berries as they have come from the destemmer.
Yes, they are.
And again, there's some green berries mixed in there, there's stems mixed in there, there may be some stink bugs mixed in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this step is really important because it helps separate the berries that don't make quality standards from the berries that do make quality standards.
Yes, they sure do. I like to, this is just really about rinsing that bleach off and seeing what else wants to come to the top. I don't spin forever here. I really don't spin forever in the first sink either, but I'll pull these out now. It's shocking the amount of stem that could be in here, and I really drain super well here because I don't want to put water weight in my bags. My customers are paying for berries, not water.
After the fruit has been destemmed, washed, and sanitized, it is typically stored. Elderberries can be stored for short periods of time as fresh berries, but are more commonly packaged and then frozen. Once the elderberry crop has been harvested, destemmed, sanitized, and cleaned, frequently the berries are held frozen for long periods of time until processing or until sales. An example here at Sac River Elderberry Farm, in a deep freeze, the berries are held here. They're packaged in gallon-sized bags, and then these berries are held at temperatures between 0 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and they'll maintain their quality for at least 2 years if held continuously frozen. In-depth information on elderberry production and marketing is found in the publication Growing and Marketing Elderberries in Missouri. This is available from the University of Missouri Center for Agroforestry at their website as a free downloadable PDF. For more information on elderberries, please feel free to reach out to Patrick Byers at the email and the telephone number here on the slide. I'd be very excited to share with you information on growing elderberries as a profitable and sustainable crop for Missouri.